Hello, dear listeners. If you're new here, we're Margin Mavens, and we are obsessed with writing in our books and sharing our thoughts with you guys. In this episode, we are talking about Silver Nitrate, written by New York Times bestselling author Silvia Moreno-Garcia. She's the author of books like Mexican Gothic and The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, two books that we will also be diving into in the coming weeks. Silver Nitrate follows Montserrat, a sound editor who is struggling in a male dominated field in Mexico, where the movies aren't being made like they once were. Her best friend Tristán is a faded soap opera star who has been by her side since they were children, always overlooking the woman he calls Momo as he dives headfirst into doomed relationships. The two of them meet Abel, a washed up filmmaker who soon wraps them up in a story of magic, Nazi occultism, and ghosts. If this sounds like your cup of tea, feel free to go and pick up the book and come back and join us when you're ready for all the opinions and the spoilers. So, right off the bat, I gave this book 4 out of 5. What did you give it? Yeah, I thought it was really good. I can't really explain why I didn't give it a 5.
I think I gave
You
it
know,
four and a
I
half
just
out of 5.
didn't, if that makes sense. Like the vibe was not there for me to give it that full 5.
For me for me, and
Mhm.
this is in no way at all
Mm.
indicative of the quality of this book or how much I enjoy it. But
Mm.
I've read almost all of Silvia Moreno-Garcia's books, and this is not my favorite. I'm not even sure this hits top 3 favorite
At some
out
point,
of all of
yeah.
what I've read. So, like, that's why it didn't get a full 5 stars for me. It might have gotten 5
I'm
stars. I
excited to read the
honestly
rest of
would have
them.
to check and
It
see.
was
Um, but
it was a little bit
it
of like a
it is not
slow
my favorite out of all the
build
books
up
of hers that
because
I have read.
the you know,
They are
Momo,
so good.
who I'm gonna affectionately call her that
It's
moving
very
in
much
just
a
so I don't
slow
trip over
build
the
up.
word every single
Yes.
time. Momo is very reserved. She does her thing, goes home, lives her life, and then like washes and repeats. So that cycle was really evident pretty early on. So it was kind of hard to grip me. And then you had Tristan, who is he's a lot at the beginning because yeah, but I think like in the beginning without knowing more about him, without having a lot of like explanation for his
He's a
behavior,
lot in the
it's a
whole
lot
book.
to take
Let's be
in.
real.
Whereas I think as the story continues and you start hearing more from his side, like his chapters and everything, he started to make a lot more sense to me. So I understood why he was the way he was. Whereas in the beginning, obviously, when we first get introduced to him, when they're meeting up for lunch, and he's like immediately like, "Why can't you stay longer? Like, you're gonna leave me here by myself," and like all of these
Mhm.
things. And I was like, "All right, I need you to relax." Um, and then you get to know more about him and stuff. So I my favorite character hands down was Momo.
Mhm.
There was no other choice for me. Like I kept yeah, she was so cool.
Yes. She is my out of all of Silvia Moreno-Garcia's books that I have read, she
Yeah.
is my favorite female
She
main
was just super
character,
cool.
and that's saying something
I think I
because
saw a
there
lot
are
of myself in
consistently in
her.
every book solid female
And
main
before I dive
characters.
too far into that, I think this book was really cool for me because it's based in Mexico, right? That's where my family's from. So to hear a lot of the names of places that I've grown up hearing was really cool to kind of hear names of, movies or actors or anything like that and to be told like
Mhm.
kind of more about them and also just like from a nerd standpoint hearing more about like silver nitrate and how that worked and like all of those things like that was really cool. I think I really connected with her because of her like
Yeah.
obsessive tendencies. Like she couldn't just like have walking into the scenario and being like, oh, I need to like figure out what's going on with this magic stuff, but I don't want it to take over my life. Like she brought out a murder board, like she started making
Yeah.
the connection, she started taking the notes, she started doing the research.
Truly Charlie Day from
Yeah.
It's Always Sunny, that
Yeah.
whole
And
meme.
and so that was really cool to me because I knew that that would be what I would do if I found myself in this situation of like
Yeah.
I'm not just going to take people's word for things. I need to figure out what's going on for
And she
myself.
does.
And she
She does
does, and
figure
she
it out.
like kicks butt at it too. Like
Yeah.
she like not only it's one thing to learn about the magic system and be like, okay, I understand what's happening to us, but it's another thing entirely for her to have been able to wield that magic system and like warp
Yeah.
it to fit her. And not only that, but to be able to explain it in like layman's terms to Tristan so that he
Mhm.
was able to use it without having any understanding of anything else.
Mhm.
You know, like I had a lot of respect for that because she was the one that was like knees deep in it, learning everything she could about it. But she was able to, it's the teacher in me, I guess. She was able to take that information and give it to him in a
Right.
way that was like manageable for him without him like kind of like having to give up his boundaries and his morals. Cause she was like, you
Yeah.
don't need to know anything about this, but if push comes to shove, do this thing, use our alphabet and like you'll be okay. Um, and I really like that. As someone that once again grew up hearing all of these like ghost stories, especially in Mexico and all of these different experiences that my family grew up having, it was really interesting to hear kind of a theory as to why it was happening, you know, and
Mhm.
having this bad guy, right? Where
Nazi.
bad guy I don't read the backs of books. Let me put
Same.
that out there. I don't read the backs of
Same.
books. I will occasionally read the basically the back of the book, I guess, but like from Goodreads, but I won't read the entire thing. I'll just kind of get the idea, or if somebody recommends it, I'm real easy to please, so I'll just add it to a TBR. But I don't do a lot of research on books walking in, right? So the
Mhm.
Nazis surprised me,
Yeah.
which they
Yeah.
shouldn't have, because once again, like constantly hearing all of these theories growing up of like Nazis running from Germany and going to Latin America.
Mhm.
You know, it wasn't surprising, but it surprised me to find it, if that makes sense.
It does.
And so that was really fun because I don't know, I like historical fiction. I think I'm getting to the point where I like historical fiction.
Heck yeah.
We've we've
Heck yeah.
we've gone through the journey together because the first one obviously that I read was Most Ardently.
Yes.
Yeah. Way back when, you know, it feels so long since then because the channel has grown so lovingly. Um, but yeah, I really enjoyed this book. My favorite scene was it easily could have been the actual like final showdown fight,
Mhm.
but more specifically when Tristan decides to go back for Momo, I really liked seeing his
Character growth.
character growth and him kind of walking through it himself. Like it wasn't just something that was unsaid with that character growth. Like he's like outside and he's like, man, like I really don't want to go back in there, but like Momo's not in there and a world without Momo is not a world I want to be in and like all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, you're coming to the realization that you love her, you idiot. You know,
Mhm.
and it was the constant book of her being very like exasperated with him, which I get it because she's been in love with this guy forever.
Mhm.
And both of them are walking into situations that they should not be walking into. And he
Mhm.
was so caught up in his own things that it had to have been heartbreaking for her to wonder if he was ever going to be like man enough or like adult enough to deal with his stuff. You know, like
Mhm.
she was like, we've all got things, but like you're letting it like drown you constantly.
Mhm.
Um And so I really liked seeing that kind of like catalyst and that like ending of him being like, I have to go back in. Like it's a no-brainer for me because I can't do this without her. And not just like this fight, but like life, you know? And it was really beautiful to read. And then to have his moment of basically like the confession to her, but from his
Yeah.
point of view was so smart. Like the woman
Mhm.
that Silvia Moreno is. Because if we
Mhm.
would have gotten it from Momo's point of view, 100% it would have just been like, is he serious? Is this happening? This has to be just like him pulling a fast one on me or making a joke out of it. But to have it be from his point of view made it that much more authentic because you were able to follow his like thought process of like,
Mhm.
oh, this is going to be something I have to fight for. Like I can't just tell her this is how I feel and she has to accept it. Like I have to prove that this is something that I want. I liked how they kind of like fell into it seamlessly after everything. You know, he started staying over more. Uh and then he finally is like, okay, like why don't we just like move in together? And she's like, hold on, bucko. I
Yeah.
don't do that.
Literally like, "Fuck you.
Yeah.
Why would you do this now?"
Yeah. And I like that it was a very realistic issue of like they're not kids, you know? So that she was
No,
like,
they're pushing 40 at this
yeah,
point.
she's like, I would not be able to recover if you took
Right.
this route with me just like and you weren't sure, you know? And
Right.
he was like, I'm all in, you know? Like it took a near death experience. Um, but yeah, I really loved his growth. I loved how he kind of like I don't know. I like seeing him metaphorically and literally let go of his demons
Yeah.
and grow, you know, because it's one of those things when you like I don't know. It was a little nice for me as a 25-year-old to see someone pushing 40 and still have some like things to work through because
Mhm.
obviously I know it exists, but it's not
Yeah.
stories that get told to us very often, so that was pretty cool.
Correct.
I've yapped.
Correct.
You can yap now.
Along that lines, I mean, like, the 30 under 30 Forbes list has really, like, done society a giant disservice by making you think that if you don't accomplish something by the age of 30, like, you'll never accomplish anything, and that's so wrong. Like, it's just so inaccurate. Like, you have your entire life to achieve your dreams. Like, you're not when you choose or when you have the capacity to go for things does not determine whether or not you're a failure in life. So
Mhm.
yeah, I love the ages of the protagonists in this book between Montserrat and Tristán because it's like, you know what, they're basically my age.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't feel like a failure. Like I feel if anything like things are getting better. Like
Yeah.
there's no expiration date on that. Um but yeah, I mean I love this book. I love Silvia Moreno-Garcia as an author in general. Everything she writes is just so flippin' good. Like it's just so good, so well thought out. I love the entirety of chapter 16 where Montserrat is going and exploring the old offices of the publishing house and just the badass that she is. It really just displays perfectly
Oh yeah,
how
because
she
that's when she
just
gets attacked, right? Like she's like
yes,
being
that's the first
chased.
time. Yeah. And that's like a perfect indicator of like who she is as a person in this story cuz she embraces the magic and she uses it
Mhm.
to her advantage. Like she doesn't shy away from it. She's like, okay, if this is what we're going up against, then I guess you have to fight fire with fire. And in some
Mhm.
cases, literally fight fire with fire. So, I mean, that whole chapter of just watching her like go through and then getting chased and her just being like, no, you need to leave me alone. Like,
Mhm.
absolutely not.
We are
Go
not
away.
doing this. Yeah.
We're not doing this. And then the end, again, with Tristán confessing and all of that, and just being like, listen, like, do you want, this has been 20 years of foreplay. Like, we can keep going. Like, we don't have to do anything. You
But
know,
wouldn't
do
it
you
be
want to wait?
nice?
Yeah. Do you want to wait until we're old and can't like chew our own food? Because I'll feed you parade foods, but like it would really be a shame if I die of a heart attack at
Yeah.
89 after the first time we have sex. Like that's not.
Yeah.
And it just made me laugh so hard because if there's nothing more indicative of Tristan as a person, it's that little
Yeah.
confession of
And
like,
yeah.
I'm dead serious, but I'm gonna make a joke out of it
Mhm.
and then just be super gross.
Yeah, I liked that throughout the entire book, he's like flirting with her,
Yeah.
but both of them are like unaware of it. Like
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, like this is Momo. Like she's always there for me. I need her in my life." Like he's basically the entire book confessing that he loves her and needs her,
Mm-hmm.
but both of them
Mm-hmm.
are like, "That's just my
She,
bestie," you know?
yeah,
Like
she will not believe it because she does not want to get hurt.
yeah, and he is like, "Oh, like she has never brought up her feelings again for me." So we like know not to cross that line,
Yep.
right? But the point where he like sleeps over and he's like drunk and he's like, "Why don't you just like get under the covers?" And what happens happens. And she's like,
I'm
"Dude."
not having sex with you. Like we're not doing that.
And I think it was really funny because it's realistic, you know? It's realistic in people that are both single pushing 40 and have that like close connection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's human nature to have that moment of like, oh, should we do this kind of thing. But then with
Yes.
them it went so much deeper because there
Yes.
was actual feelings involved.
Yes.
um
And I think the Stan is so interesting in that like I don't know if he fully just refused to acknowledge his feelings or if he just felt like he would never be good enough for her
yeah.
and just couldn't allow himself to have hope and
Mhm.
think that maybe things could be good with her because he with his trauma with Karina and everything like maybe he wasn't a good enough person for somebody like her.
Yeah. And
It's
it's
just
it
heartbreaking.
no, and it was really beautiful because you like everything about what they're feeling.
Mhm.
Right? And I would even say everything that they're going through apart from obviously the like Nazis and the magic. Unless that's your life. I can't say how everyone lives their life. Maybe they're fighting these things on a daily. But everything about what they're going through is very relatable
Yeah.
in some sense of like everybody has dealt with a job that they're like, I am not growing in this job. I'm being treated unfairly, but I do love
Mhm.
what I'm doing, so I don't want to leave.
Mhm.
Um and having it be to where, maybe some people in Tristan's case, right, they did something that they believe is like their peak and they have not let go of it, even though it does not have to be your peak. You
Right.
could have been a great whatever at some point, but that does not mean that your journey ended there if you did not get to continue being that thing. And I think that the story itself is just really, really cool. I keep going back to their relationship, but I like the fact that Momo is very honest with herself about the fact that she loves him, but that's not
Yeah.
she doesn't give him uh ability to mistreat her despite her feelings. I think it
Right.
would have been really easy for any other author to say, okay, so and so loves this person, so therefore they put up with a lot of crap.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
And she
and
doesn't.
she
She
doesn't. Like,
refuses.
she refuses. She's like, you will not talk to me this way. I'm not going to let you borrow my car just because you want it. I'm setting these boundaries and stuff like that. And it's incredibly important because she doesn't let that love, those feelings that she has for him, define how she's going to be treated by him, which is why I think it really helps Tristan like grow as they start dealing with these hard things together because he is able to face those moments of like, oh, I really am ashamed of what I said to her. I need to
Mhm.
like not be that way anymore.
Right.
Um Getting away from that for a second. This is obviously a horror and a mystery, right? I think the
Yeah.
horror really hit in a way that was super cool because it didn't need mindless like gore and it didn't need mindless like jump scares. It was a very slow build horror, right? Especially in Tristan's case, where he doesn't know that he's going to start seeing his dead girlfriend showing up bloody in his life, right? But I immediately pegged like when it kept getting mentioned that his like tap was on and he was like, my tap keeps coming on, but like I need to get a plumber on this or whatever. And I'm like, dude, something is happening. Obviously, I didn't know what was happening, but I was like, something is happening. You're not paying more attention to this water.
Classic haunted.
Yeah, like it's a slow build haunting. And I thought that that was really cool because I think a lot of authors or a lot of media and horror anyways, no matter what their medium is, kind of rush into things a lot
Mhm.
because they're like, you know that it's going to be a horror, so I'm not going to like slowly build up into it being horror. And I'm
Mhm.
like, no, no, no. If I walk into it being a horror, I do not necessarily want like page 3, right, to be where everything is kind of laid out and I know exactly what to expect the rest of it, right? We just
Mhm.
did the interview with Let's Split Up, right? Which to not get into spoilers because this video comes out before that one, but you still got that fast-paced horror at the beginning, but then
Mhm.
there were still surprises, and that's what I
Mhm.
like. Whereas a lot of authors will do, I'm gonna immediately jump into this, and it's gonna be the exact same shtick the entire time.
Yeah.
But I liked the like eerie creepiness of this one, where you kind of just saw things starting to happen with them, and you were like, "Oh, when's it gonna get serious? When is this like thing gonna kind of hit the like boiling point?"
And then it
And then
does,
it does,
like,
and
quickly,
you're like, "Oh no,
quickly.
things are
These
going."
are popping off, yeah.
Yeah, and so I really love that. There's a quote in the book that is my favorite, but I think it might be a cliche quote that I love, because even in the conversation itself, they like make fun of this line, but it's
Mhm.
specifically when the line is basically Lopez says the living hold on to ghosts. You made a haunted house out of your own flesh and bones. And that was
Yes.
such a good
Yes.
line because even though like Momo makes fun of him, right? And she's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, that's awfully poetic of you." And I'm like, I would obviously love the poetic line because
Mhm.
it's something that is so real for so many people, Your ghosts do not have to be physical like phantasmas. They can be
Yes.
things that you're holding on to from your past, and it's something that you have to work through. Like all of us are holding on to something, but you have to be determined to work through it, learn from it, let it go, right?
Mhm.
And so for him to kind of call her out and be like, you are holding on to these things and you're making that haunted house, you're allowing it to linger and they're haunting you, these past, these moments, these memories. And I think this was literally the only thing that I underlined in this book because I was focusing so much more on like I was devouring this book, so I wasn't really taking the time to sit down and like analyze things. And
Mhm.
I was like in the middle of like my day and I'm reading this book and I got to that line and I was like, "Oh my god, I need a pencil." And I was like scrambling to find a pencil and it just it hit the spot that I needed for a quote.
It is a very good quote, and it is a very, like, good indicator of the entire book, because 'cause
Mhm.
they're bo Montserrat and Tristán are both dealing with, like, their own ghosts.
Trauma and ghosts and yeah.
Yeah. So that was a really good quote. But also, I think my favorite, it's not really a quote, but like my favorite piece about this book is just the casual buy can rep. It's just mentioned. It's not a major plot point. Like, it's just like, yeah, I like girls and boys. And
Yeah.
it is what and it's just like bisexual representation, disabled representation
Mhm.
with Montserrat because of her leg, and just like the beliefs that Latine, specifically Mexican families, have and share, like in those verbal stories that are told from
Yeah.
generation to generation. It's just a really good book for Hispanic Heritage Month, for Bisexual Visibility Month. Like it's got all the
Hmm.
rep you could ever possibly ask
And it
for.
does it so like
It's subtle.
nonchalantly,
Yeah.
because obviously for representation and stuff, you can run into books where the representation seems very forced. It seems like they're kind of like hitting check boxes. But this
Mhm.
one was just kind of like, these are these people, this is how they exist. This is their life, and then they move
Right.
on to the actual plot points.
Right.
And just overall, I think it was beautifully written.
Such a good book. Such
So that has been our episode covering Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I highly recommend picking up this book.
Yes. All of Silvia Moreno-Garcia's books.
And we're basically going through it. We're going through the catalog very
Yes.
slowly for this
Yes.
this coming month.
The two that we probably won't get to, but y'all should definitely check out, are Gods of Jade and Shadow and Certain Dark Things. Gods of Jade and Shadow is, without giving too much away, also historical fiction with Mexican gods, and Certain Dark Things is probably not as much historical fiction, but it does have vampires.
Nice.
Perfect for spooky season. So
Yeah.
keep that in
I'll
mind.
probably still try to read them. Yeah, you never know. I'm mentally ill. But that has been our episode. If you are not already following us on all the social medias, the links are going to be in the description below. You should definitely go and stalk us everywhere, right?
Hmm.
And if you have not joined the Patreon, you should, even if it's just the free tiers, because you guys are going to be getting some goodies over there that you would not want to miss. And this has been another episode of Margin Mavens.